If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by names to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up with one or tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there's nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch, if neither foe nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but not too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, then yours is the earth and all that is in it. And what is more, you will be a man, my son. My name is Ron Missick, and I come from a small little island, a group of islands in the Caribbean, born in Turks and Caicos, August 1st, 1951. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there was a parade going by. It was freedom. It's Emancipation Day. My birth from the womb, and literally Emancipation Day. In the Caribbean, that is. It happened there before it happened here. My mother, Winifred Louise Steed Bain, I gave birth to her 3rd child, me. And that is how I came to be here on Earth. So day one, I lived for a short time in Turks and Caicos, moved to the Bahamas, economic refugees, and then had to deal with the difference between the Turks Islanders and the Bahamians. I'll fill you in, it's going to be exciting. Now, I guess you could say it's the equivalent of going from West Coast to East Coast here. It's a little bit different in temperament and style. However, lived in the Bahamas, went to school, had an opportunity to come to the U.S. And the U.S., this is the place. So when I came here, I came as a student, and as a student, you have to understand that there are a lot of things you run into coming from one culture, one nation into another. You have to learn everything about that culture, about that nature. And what I found was that the expectation, the excitement of going someplace new kind of overrides, and not only that, but youthful expectation, wanting to learn, wanting to understand, wanting to see everything that's going on. Yes, okay. One of 4 children, 2 older siblings, 1 younger. I'll tell you about my younger sibling. His name is Lewis. And that will feature into my talk here. But what does that have to do with courage? Well, that has everything to do with courage. Do you know that courage shows up when you stand up, when you stand for something bigger than yourself? And this is something you really can't plan for. It's in the moment. It's when who you are really comes out. You know, more often than not, you can tell what's in a person by what comes out of a person in the moment when they're not on God. That's when they're kind of who they truly are shows up. But courage. Now, I've got to tell you, I made a couple of notations here on some cards here, and that's what I don't want to do. I don't want to drop my cards because I know if I drop my cards, I'll say everything backwards. No, I won't, but just to let you know what's going on here. So, here I go. Courage has been defined and redefined in a lot of ways. It's been defined as grit, boldness, guts. It's been defined as the ability to do something that frightens you in the moment. It's been defined in many ways, but what does it truly look like? What does courage look like? Well, there's that opportunity. I'll share with you what my courage looked like. It has to do with values. What do you truly value? What makes you who you are? And make no doubt about it, each and every one of you is created specifically to be who you are. I believe that we're all created in the image of God, and that gives us an identity, that gives us an accountability, a responsibility, and a destiny. So, what is your purpose? What is my purpose? I think it's the North Star. It's the thing that drives us to do what we're called to do. Some are called to be in leadership, be it a corporation or be it a municipality. Some of us are called to be in leadership, be it in a nonprofit or in voluntary capacity. Some of us are called to be in leadership when it comes to the next generation, giving to them of ourselves. But it all starts with the bravery of being a parent. Who can tell me here, if you're a parent, the expectation, the anticipation, the dread, the exaltation of a child when that child comes into your life. You're filled with joy and unimaginable happiness, but at the same time there's a certain amount of fear, there's a certain amount of what's the word, trepidation? Boy, I love that word. I went to college to use that word, by the way. So when you have that and you overcome that and you deal with that every day on and on, I refer to it as everyday courage, because it tells you that you must, as a parent or as parents, provide for your children and do the difficult things that may seem difficult to them, but when there's that desire, that love, that bigger than ourselves need to really step up and do what needs to be done, that's courage. That's everyday courage. Whereas we have moral courage, that's knowing what is the right thing to do and standing up for it, right? I found that the things that drive me had to do with what I came to understand was what is right. Now, let me just share with you this. In the Bahamas, where I lived, there were Haitians coming in, and then of course Bahamians that were there. We had been in the Bahamas long enough to not only sound Bahamian, but more or less pass as Bahamians. I mean, you have to understand, every nation has its own safeguards they want to keep out rather than bring in because of the change and the fear there. That's endemic. Doesn't matter what nation it is, it's across the world. But how do we get beyond that? Well, Haitians were coming in illegally, and that means that they could be rounded up and deported back to Haiti. And at that time, Haiti was a terrible place. And people were dying making that trip on boats that were overcrowded and that would actually turn over and bodies would wash up on the shore. And I would hear that. And so there was this antipathy against Haitians. And I knew there was something wrong about that. And so when I saw Haitians being mistreated, I stood up. I did not like that because I think the other part of courage is that empathetic courage that puts you in their shoes and realize that. And we tend to say that, but by the grace of God go I. Well, it's true, because being blessed in this nation, whose resources are vast, it's just mind-blowing. But showing that moral courage to want to say, no, this treatment is wrong. You must not do this. Standing up. Then there's the intellectual courage. We know what is right, and yet we make all sorts of mental calculations to get around and to justify in our own mind, well, if I don't do something about it, that doesn't mean I'm really for it. And I reminded my mom, let me go back to my roots, Mummy. That's what I call my mom, Mummy. I stopped doing that when I was recounting a story here in my early years of high school, where because of the cultural difference, here you say mom, there we said mummy. And I had a student retort, oh, you have a mummy for parent? You know, the Egyptian mummy, that's where they, and so I got out of that mindset, but mummy, because it's very dear to me. But she would tell me this: if you can't help, don't hinder. Okay. Let that sit on your conscience for a while. If you can't help, don't hinder. I have come to understand that we're always doing one or the other, constantly. Either we're helping or we're hindering. There is no in between. Either you're alive or you're dead. There's no in between. So, having those values built into you sets you on a course. There are many intersections in life. Some of them are notable, some of them not quite. They seem the ordinary happenings. And these ordinary happenings happen so often that we call it life, but it shapes us, it moves us, it influences us in a general direction. But then there comes that course correction, that defining moment where you find yourself in an uneasy environment. It disturbs you, it moves you, it causes you to rethink your suppositions, your values, and you ask yourself, what is my purpose in life? Am I fulfilling that purpose? Am I here to consume only? Am I here to touch a life in a way that's going to improve that life? Am I here to encourage someone? Am I here to uplift someone? Am I here to, what is my purpose? I'm here for a reason. What is my North Star? Is it self-aggrandizement? Is it self-pleasure? Is it self-adulation? Or is it bigger than that? You see, when we turn in on ourselves, we become small. When we use the spark that is within us and project that out, that becomes a multiplier. We grow, we get back in return, we grow even more, we get back in return, we grow even more. It's that wave that goes out, the ripples come back, it pushes that wave back out again. When we give of ourselves to something or someone greater than we are, you know, courage defines who we are in the moment. I'll tell you about such a moment. Here I am, a skinny 16, 17-year-old kid on his way home. I might say sharply dressed. I've got a black pinstripe jacket on. The pinstripes were red and green and yellow. Okay. And it's buttoned up. I've got some clothes over my left arm, and I'm walking down the bridge that's normally heavily traveled. But this time of day, I'm basically the only person on the bridge. I'm on the right-hand side walking down. Not long after, I'm about midpoint of the bridge. Now, this is a land bridge, so it's over land, it's not over water. It's coming from State Street in Albany, New York. Now you know the place. Down Northern Boulevard, the name has since changed. And so, I'm about, I'm saying 85 feet off the ground at this point, at the midpoint of the bridge. This car pulls up, and I'm walking down. This car pulls up, stops. This man gets out. He loomed over the car. He's got out of the car. He's got the door in his left hand. He's looking over the car at me. He's about 6'4". He goes about, I would say, 240, 250. And here I am, a skinny kid on the bridge, looking back at him. Now, mind you, as a child, as a kid, 16 years old, I still wore size 12 boys' clothing. Okay, so I was small. And needless to say, he gets my attention. He doesn't say anything to me, but he leers out after me, and I'm thinking, well, what does he want? He's in a car. I'm not physically larger than I am. And what am I to do? Well, here I am in the moment. I've got clothes over my left hand. And at this point, I turned and faced him. He's not asking a question as to whether or not he wanted something or asked if I wanted a ride or not, or anything like that. He is just standing there looking at me. And I can see in his eyes that this was not something good going on here. So I very gently unbuttoned my jacket. I reached my hand around to the small of my back. I stood there. I looked at him with a little bit of a smile, as if, okay, now it's your move. He looked. I could still see him calculating, why isn't this skinny kid running? Why isn't he intimidated by me? Why? And why is he standing like that with his hands behind his back? Well, he never challenged. He just got back in his car and drove away. So I stood there as he got back in his car. He drove away. when he got down almost to the end of the bridge. I removed my hand, buttoned my jacket back up, and proceeded walking home. Now, in the moment, what was I to do? Being I am, I probably would lose the fist fight. But I knew that instantly, I knew that I had to take a stand. So, no matter what was coming, I was prepared. But I was not going to give him the satisfaction of him chasing me, running away. I was going to fight with all my might if I had to, but I didn't have to. I'm convinced that we tend to give our power away by being afraid of fear. Who was it? The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. We've heard that statement before. But I have a way of looking at fear, and there's an acronym. I didn't come up with it, but here it is. FEAR. F-E-A-R. False evidence appearing real. Get it? F, false, E, evidence, A, appearing real. So there's a difference between danger and fear. Danger. A lion is dangerous roaming the street. A lion is not dangerous behind bars in the zoo. Or if you're on the Serengeti, a lion is not dangerous if you're in your vehicle and it's all rolled up, or if you're in Yellowstone. A bear is not dangerous if you're in your vehicle and you can move around. But of course, bears are very powerful and you don't want to challenge them too often. So understanding the difference between danger and fear. Was I in a dangerous situation? Yeah. I had no idea what that individual's intent was. So, how do we exhibit courage? Oh, what is courage? We talked about that. Sometimes we exhibit courage because we must defend someone. I was telling you about my younger brother. His name is Louis. Remember when cars had bumpers? Okay. Well, I'm a tiny kid, even younger than 16. And I'm sitting on the hood of a car, my feet on the bumper of that car. And my brother, who's 17 months younger than I am, 17, 18 months younger than I am, he is being picked on. I was doing something over here, paying attention, and the next thing I heard was his voice. And parents, you know, when you hear your child's voice, it automatically, it could be a Yankee Stadium. Well, sorry, it could be at Fenway. Sorry about that. My New York roots coming through. And if you hear that voice, it automatically, it just draws you in. Well, I was responsible for my younger brother. And somebody was picking on him, a much older individual. The very next thing I realized was I had gone from that sitting position with my feet on the bumper. I flew forward and I ended up in that young man's chest, who was much larger than the two of us put together. And now that I've got him just where I want him, I realize what I had just done. But one thing we both had, the capacity, was we were fast on our feet. Okay, so we could outrun. As a matter of fact, we were so fast, we could actually keep pace with anyone that was running after us and just run fast enough to frustrate them and taunt them. Well, you have to be a kid to understand that. But You never realize the amount of danger you're in until you get older and realize, you look back and say, yeesh, I wish I had known. No, I'm glad I didn't know then what I know now, because my actions would have been totally different. So there is that kind of spontaneous courage to do what has to be done in the moment. I think if we have too much time to think about our situation, we tend to think ourselves out of it. But when an event really hits home, when it makes us uncomfortable, when it causes us to really look at ourselves as an individual, as a family, as a community, as a state, as a nation, and realize something isn't quite right here. Do we have the courage to face what needs to be done in the moment? Or are we going to think about it and talk ourselves and think ourselves out of it? We all have gone through some very difficult times. COVID, ooh, yeah, still having the effect of that. And in the midst of COVID, our national conscience was just shattered by what happened to George Floyd. If there's one human being that cannot understand that kind of treatment and see it for the wrong that it is, you must recheck your values for what it means to be human. Make no doubt about it, we've all been influenced by our communities. We've been taught what to think. And here's my passion for the young and the young at heart: to understand your uniqueness, your identity and purpose in life. If we are created, and I believe that we are, that tells me that we're created in the image of our Creator, and according to the preamble, the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men, all human, are created in the image of our Creator, and endowed with certain inalienable rights, among which life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those are just some, but there are others. Okay, so do we see ourselves as created beings, or do we see ourselves as evolved beings? There's a difference. There's a difference. If we are created, then the diversity of creation is across the spectrum. If we see ourselves as evolved, and all the evidence that I've seen as the evolutionistic scale, I'm not quite human yet. Realize that? Because all the models I've ever seen of evolution is that something starts at a micro level and becomes at a macro level. It goes through a kind of an ape-like that has dark skin, and the dark skin turns into white skin, and the white skin is that of a Western European. So it says that you go from being dark into being white, and so I haven't quite gotten into the whiteness yet, so I'm not quite human. You see how that works? So what does that say to your mindset when you see that? You may not have questioned it. You may not have questioned it, but what does that say to your mindset? That subtle program working in the back of your mind. How does that, pardon the pun, color your vision? Get it? So what I'm asking is, because we don't really know sometimes what we have been taught to think about or to accept as normal, we have this conflict of creation with evolution mixed into it, because the end product looks more like me than it does like them. And so what does that do? That automatically elevates you above the less developed, less evolved individuals. But then creation says something totally different. Creation says, no, you were created in the image of your creator, and oh, by the way, that means the diversity and the complexity of humanity is all in the image of our creator. All of it. See, that blows your mind in a huge way, because now you have to unthink or unlearn what you've learned and take in something totally different. And the vastness of creation really just washes away the momentary understanding of evolution. I dare say that evolution would not have gotten as big a push or as big a drive if the end result of evolution still looked like me. It just wouldn't fly. People would be hanging on to creation tooth and nail without a question. So, what is my courage to speak to you, to engage you into something that helps you to think critically about what you have been handed in and through society, the history books. Oh, by the way, speaking about history, I told you I came from the Caribbean. Well, born there anyway. I learned about American history from the British perspective. Do you know that you're rebels? You rebelled against the crown? And I found out that in so doing, you destroyed property, radicals, leftists. You guys were so radically left, it was incredible. You dressed up like somebody else, not even representing yourself. You dressed up to disguise your identity, destroyed property in the dark of night. What do you call people like that? Radicals, right? Antifa? Do you know that Antifa, the greatest generation that has lived here in the United States, went to war and fought and defeated fascism? My father, my dad actually, Joseph Thomas Sullivan, my dad, came into my life when I was about 12 years old. No, a little bit younger than that. He was part of that great generation. He was from upstate New York, Troy, New York. He would tell me about the story about his family, how they came to the United States, potato famine in Ireland, how the British was against them, what he did during the war, how he fought fascism. You see, if you don't understand what history is, we'll only live in sound bites. And I found that as a result of knowing who I am, who I'm meant to be, I'm finding that this gives me the desire to help those that I come in contact with understand, or at least become aware of their purpose in life. And guess what? As long as you are, you can still you can still fulfill your promise, your purpose. Don't think it has to be something huge. It doesn't. You may have already fulfilled your purpose. You don't know. What is your North Star? What is your burning desire? Each of you have demonstrated courage untold times. Right? You have. No one can tell your story but you. And I tell you this, it is important, vastly important, greatly important, that you pass on that information to someone, somehow, because your story is truly unique. I thank you for your time. Are there any questions or any comments?